Okay, so I'm going to show how to pull an animation out of the Mixamo platform and bring it into Second Life. And the one that's requested is drawing a sword, this one here. And I will download, just leave the defaults. And then we'll go into Blender. We can't create a Second Life compatible animation. And what I mean by that is we can't create an animation that works with in-world rigs without a starting pose that represents these Second Life rig properties. In order to do that, we need a reference. So I'm going to create a rig. This is the default. Turn on my move tool. And we'll use that to adjust the legs and the fingers. And I think that's all we'll need for now. But this is also in a strange starting pose, which is probably where you want it to be. But we need this pose instead. Let's start with the rest pose. Let's see what the rest pose represents, and it's close to a T pose. So we're going to set that as the starting pose. In order to do that, I need to go into pose mode, select all the bones, A, and then I want to select all of these keys, A, and I want to move everything over to frame 2 so that frame 1 is accessible to me to use. You see it's empty. Then I'm going to reset the pose, Alt R and Alt G, and then I'm going to set this as a reference pose on the frame 1, and I need a key set. I'll use Lock Rot here and set that. I still have to do some adjustments, and I will replace that key when I'm done with the adjustments. But before I do that, I want to load a map. I don't think we have to map this. Let's go check. Visual Snap Mapper. I'm going to load the map that I think works with this. And what a map is it represents a name map from what the bones are named to what they ought to be named. And in here we're looking for Mixamo no prefix, because Mixamo adds a prefix to its bones. And as you can see, this map doesn't fit because there's no prefix, and all of Mixamo rigs have prefixes, and this one happens to be that. Now Bento Buddy can identify the prefix, and if you just click this button, it'll remove the prefix of the bone names on the rig, and then we can try that again, and it should work. Mixamo no prefix, load that, and we don't get an error. In order to test this, I'm going to just click action and see what I get. Everything red is mapped, and it looks like all the major bones are being utilized. So we're good. I'll reset the stage here because we don't need this anymore. That was for loading the map and testing it. And then I'll go into pose mode, and I want to bring these legs together a little bit so it's closer to what Second Life expects. But first I want to bring the rig forward through the mesh so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to pose this, and through testing I know that this is about 6 degrees, so I'll do 6 on that, and R, you'll see, and -6 on the other side, and that looks fine. And I'll A to select all the bones, and I will rewrite my reference frame, hitting I for insert key. Now I also need my fingers to be in this similar position as those. So if I move one of these bones, I want to bring that up a little bit like Second Life's are. I think I can leave those like that though. Those look like they're angled, so I'll leave those in that angle. But you see you have to do both sides. But let's see if the names are done properly, so that when I use the X mirror, both fingers move, and they do. So that's convenient. If that weren't true, we would have to do both sides. So let's bring that up, and then I'm going to go to the top view and try to mimic the angle of this thumb here, which is about there. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it looks good when you bring it into Second Life, it is. Just leave it like that. But chances are you'll have to test this a few times before you get it right. Alright, so now that I have my fingers adjusted, I'm going to hit A again and then save this new change. Okay. Now if you want, you can save this pose to a library so that you can load it again later. And you can do that under Enable Posing Library. Add the pose, give it a name, T-pose, and then save the library so you can load it later. Once you load the library, you can apply it using this little guy here. You'll notice if I scrub the timeline, I can just hit that to get that back. It's not permanent, so you don't have to worry about goofing it up. Alright, so let's bring this animation in the Second Life. I don't need this reference rig anymore. I'm going to retarget this using the character tools, retarget motion, and I want to distance the proxy rig a little bit so I can see what I'm doing, and click action. If I didn't do that, it would just be in the same spot as the source rig. And then you can just scrub the timeline to see that it works. Let's go over to the animation exporter and anim export features. I'm going to bump that up to 4, and I'm going to loop my animation. I do that for testing. You probably won't do that if you're doing one-shots, and then you'll do your loops if you need to in script instead. But for testing, I always loop. Oops, make sure that this proxy rig is selected. But I don't want to loop the first frame, or it's going to look goofy, right? I don't want that in Second Life. So I want frame 2 in Second Life. I want to start there. Unless you have some unique needs, then you'll change your reference frame. Your reference frame has to be the T-pose here, but you might want to transition from a different pose rather than this. It's up to you. Anyway, we'll just bring this out into Second Life and see what happens. And I think I have a total frame range of 26, it says, right? 27, 26. And this automatically sets when you hit the retargeter, because it says send to animation. So it will send the animation frame range to the animation exporter when that's enabled, and that's enabled by default. But the other way to do this is with bone control, and it's not enabled by default. But I'm not going to get into that. That's for something else. Animation, and we'll just export our animation. What's auto key doing on? That's not what I was looking for. Anyway, let's do that and check it out in Second Life. Now, when this button stops being red, it's done exporting. If you run into an error, you want to open up this window and see what the heck happened. Alright, here we go. Alright, Looks pretty close.